Okay, now let's go through this. They are consecrated at the altar. See, what they had to do when they returned is, the first thing they did in Ezra is they rebuilt the altar. And after they got the altar built, then they built the temple, and then they started the sacrifices, and they went on and on out. But they were consecrated at the altar. What does that speak of for us? It speaks of our consecration through the cross of Christ. Look at Ezra chapter 3 and verse 2. Then stood up Jeshua the son of Jozadak and his brethren, the priests, and Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and his brethren, and builded the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings. Remember, Christ is the fulfillment of all the burnt offerings. So this is always a picture of Christ, as it is written in the law of Moses. So what was this consecration all about? It reminds us of the fact that Christ was crucified. Once for all, those sacrifices all pointed to him, but Christ was crucified once and for all. What does that mean? Well, I put a verse in Galatians 2:20. Paul said this, I have been crucified with Christ. When Christ was crucified on the cross, I was crucified with him. And so, now that I'm a Christian, it's no longer I who live, Galatians 2:20, but it's Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. What is the altar about? Every time they offered a burnt offering, they were offering a picture of Jesus Christ who would give himself for us. That's why we don't offer sacrifices anymore. And that's the heartbeat of the Roman Catholic Church. They have an altar in the front, and on that altar, Roman Catholic doctrine says they're sacrificing Christ every Mass. Did you know there are Masses going on 24 hours a day, incessantly around the world? Did you know that literally hundreds of times every day on altars, Jesus is crucified again by the Roman Church? Did you know that's an offense to God? Did you know I cannot placidly go in and watch a Mass without it offending me? And when I have tours and go into Roman Catholic churches, it offends me because they are totally going against the Word of God. They are totally defaming the once and for all sacrifice of Christ. It's wrong. It's not neutral. That's why people all the time say, well, can't I go, to please my family and go to Mass with them? Well, would you go to some place and watch them beating up your wife? It would bother you, wouldn't it? It would bother me. I would run in and defend her. Well, they're beating up Christ. They're nailing him down again, and he isn't supposed to be nailed down. He died once. So, remember that. He gave himself. But Galatians 6:14 is another one. But God forbid that I should boast except in the cross of Jesus Christ, by whom the world has been crucified to me and I to the world. It's in the past tense. The world is already crucified to me. I have already been crucified with Christ. I don't need any more crucifixions. All I need to do is live. Dead now to sin and alive no longer to my lusts. Secondly, it not only speaks of crucifixion, but I wrote down it speaks of the consecrated life. The crucified life, the consecrated life. In Romans 12:1 and 2 says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies, not Jesus' body. He doesn't need to be offered on the altar anymore. Present our bodies on the altar. And what that means is that we give ourselves back to him over and over again to be an ongoing living sacrifice. What does that mean? Well, the Old Testament sacrifices, they had to pick a perfect, spotless lamb. If you're going to kill it, thinking of most people, well, as long as I'm going to kill it, why don't I get one that has TB, respiratory problems, it's one eye got gouged out and it's limping, I'll kill that one. No, God said, I want your strongest, healthiest one. I want the one that's the whitest, that has no defects, because God gets the best. That reminds me of when the currencies were talking, at the bank in the vault. A $20 bill was there, and he was all crisp, and he smelled a little bit like cologne. He says, hi. And he says, yeah, we know you. You're always at the country club. And the $10 bill came in, and the $10 bill was all crumpled up, and it smelled like carrots and cabbage. He says, yeah, I'm always at the grocery store. And the $5 bill says, well, you think you have it bad. He was all greasy. He says, I'm always at McDonald's. And then this battered $1 bill came up, and he says, you think you have it bad. He says, I get put in the offering plate every week. I can't give anything. I only have 10s and 20s. Where's the dollar, honey? Do you have a quarter? Give your best to the Lord. It's the same idea in the Old Testament. Give your sick animals. God says, no, I want you to be personally a living, holy, acceptable sacrifice to God, which is your spiritual service. The way we serve God most, and before you sign up for the nursery and try and do a lot of hard work, the first and greatest service is offering ourselves as a living sacrifice to God. And you can do that right here. You can do that every morning. It's just become a habit in my life. When I first am aware I'm still alive, and that's how tired I am. I'm not aware I'm alive till I wake up. And then you still alive? Not in heaven? Okay. give myself back to the Lord for another day. I hope that becomes a habit in your life. Verse 2 of Romans 12 says, and don't be conformed to this world. If you belong to God, if you're a living sacrifice, if you're laying on His altar, don't, and the word conform means don't get squashed into the mold. Don't let Satan put his cookie cutter around you and cut you out in that shape. You resist that. That's why it says resist the devil, and he'll flee from you, so that we can prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And I have people all the time coming to me and they want an appointment. They want me to tell them what the Lord's will is. And you know what? You know what the Lord's will is? The Lord's will is that you yield yourself to Him. And usually there's such a blatant and glaring lack of yieldedness that I tell them, let's not even talk about the Lord's will. Let's talk about your personal consecration. Because, I don't have any trouble knowing what the Lord's will is 99.9% of the time, because it's right here. I'm not a guru, and I'm not, walking on air. It's just in the Bible. And if you just obey what it says, that covers almost every situation. People come up and say, well, should I marry this person? Well, I say, are they a Christian? Well, I'm not sure. Well, no, you're not supposed to marry them then. You don't marry unbelievers. Well, they say, well, should I keep dating this person? I say, well, what, are they godly? Well, no, they don't like to go to church, and drink and dance on the weekends, and we can't get out to church. See, why is that? That's not a question, is it? You're going against the Word of God. Okay, number 2. The second item that is really covered in this book, not only the consecration, the altar, the rebuilding of the temple, but the separation aspect. That's no intermarriage of the pagans that Ezra 9:1 talks about. Well, there are 3 quick points that I want to give you that covers over to us. Separation to us. We don't have to run around looking for pagans and telling them we can't be married to them anymore. In fact, the Scriptures say if you have an unbelieving husband or wife and they are content to live with you, that you don't ever break the marriage. Christians don't initiate breaking up marriages. You stay. Why? Because then it's a sanctifying effect on them. They might come to know Christ. Okay, but what is this talking about with us? If it doesn't mean we're supposed to get rid of, Ezra 9:1 says, get rid of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. We don't have any of those nowadays. So what does it mean to us? A, we're supposed to get rid of worldliness. That's often in the Bible. Worldliness, what it is there are 2 kingdoms, there are 2 worlds. There's the spiritual world, the heavenly kingdom, and there's the physical world, the earthly kingdom. Satan is the prince of the power of this. God is over all. And he's saying, I want you to be more thinking about eternity and spiritual things than temporary earthly things. Those that think more about the earth than they do about heaven are worldly. 1 John 2:15 through 17. Don't love the world. Verse 17, the world is passing away, and all of its lusts, but the one that does the will of God abides forever. James 4:4. Don't you know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? That's a strong verse. Secondly, not only does God say that we should be concerned about getting rid of worldliness, but we should be concerned about separating onto, and I put this down, this is a word I made up, pilgrimhood. How do you like that? I made that up. Pilgrimhood. Listen to this. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off. This is Hebrews 11:13. They embraced the promises and confessed they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Do you have pilgrimhood? Do you know that you're just here for a little while? That this place is strange? And that you're really passing through? I mean, the pilgrims left England, got on the boat, and over here. And they weren't interested in living on the boat. They wanted to get to the promised land. And so the whole way they were pilgrims passing through. As soon as that boat got near Plymouth Rock, they were off. They got right off. They weren't made to live on that boat. We weren't made to live on earth. We were made to live here for the glory of God until we get into His presence. Pilgrimhood. Thirdly, we need to endeavor to have one master. Matthew 6:24, no one can serve 2 masters. And separation means that you're going to have to hate one and love the other. You can't have 2 masters. And a lot of people struggle, especially with favorite sins between, God and the sin. And God says you can't do that. He says you got to hate the sin and love me, or else it doesn't work.